So TET changed everything in some ways, some of which I expressed before, but one of them is I'm looking at the map and I'm like, oh shit, I've got all kind of security opportunities again because there are VC all over the roads, some of which are in places I'd kind of like to clear them out of, you know, get them out of these captured capitals and stuff like that. But some of them are also just in locations where it's an opportunity to get an attack off. How good are those attacks? Well, here's the problem with them. Whatever I commit is used up for that, turn. But whatever I commit, which is probably some air power because that's good on security missions, some units that are good at moving on the roads, probably. Is going to eat up movement points to go hit this guy. At least it's going to be one movement point to go strike him. It's probably going to be two because he'll probably just move off the road and then, he's still exerting a zone of control or whatever after he takes a hit. He might disperse, but chances are I can't really kill units with security operations. They have one purpose: clear the roads. Now, the fact that most of the capitals, most of the important towns, etc., are sitting on roads means that after something that just like what just happened with the Tet offensive, or my limited version, it means that there's a lot of clutter. And there's also things like this that aren't actually on the road. He wasn't able to advance. Remember, there's a penalty. You lose your pursuit modifier when you attack a capital on the first round, I think, and maybe the first two rounds, I don't remember. But anyway, it's quite often that you can't advance, and I didn't want to move into the hex. There are disadvantages to moving into the hex. I had already, I think, captured that or something. I don't know. But, yeah, so there's issues like that. There's people like this who are nowhere near the roads. So I came up here thinking I could start playing, but now I have the whole map problem of having to assess which security operations I want to perform and which I don't. And basically that's too much for me to do in the morning. Yeah, so I'm just like, okay, maybe tonight I'll do it. And this has kind of been the type of thing that keeps me away from playing, is that actually, the big thing that keeps me away is I come up here, I move a couple of pieces after trying to figure out, looking at the whole map, where I want to concentrate. And I'm like, I just can't think. I can't figure it out. But this, like during TET, now that may mean that I become more engaged, requires me to do some across-the-board analysis again, rather than just these localized analyses, which makes the job harder. We'll see what effect it has on my play, whether or not I play more or less. I know that the threat of that coming up here, finding that and saying, I can't do that in the time that I have available, convinced me to hold off on doing the last season. So, no guarantees I'll be back on this. I know some people, at least one person responded, hey, you sound excited again. Yeah, because I was actually able to play a lot because I had to integrate a lot. But that's hard to do when you're used to, oh yeah, okay, I can look in this area, I've got a few pieces, what can I do there? Can I get an attack off, with the US? Can I hunt something down? Some big VC stacks out there like this, I've decided to, and I happen to have a lot of armored power together, I decided to prosecute a big security operation. I don't know how well it's going to go, because there are places along the roads that are going to be hard to hit, but I'm looking at these two stacks as my primary goals, and in order to do this, well, I was able to do security operations with just a couple dice before, but at this point I'm using massive air power, 21 air points. I'm not throwing it all in. I think I got more uses for my air power, but with those big stacks I want to be sure I'm hitting them with a lot of firepower. Given that Quantum itself is holding 2 of the stacks. I may want to free fire that before I go any further. Yeah, why not? It's got a 0 population. Oh, Fubon as well. I thought there were 2 in 1. Yeah, you know, Contem and Fubon are both problems for me. Let's make them problems right off the bat. I don't see any other huge stacks I'm likely to be able to hit with this particular stack. But yeah, I mean, I've got 21 air power and 7 firepower. I'm hitting a 28. As long as I don't hit anything too big, I'm okay. Let me check these guys. Make sure there's not a regiment. You know, should I be able to do this? No, I shouldn't. But here's the thing. Yeah, there's regimental parts to that. Well, we'll see what happens. Because, yeah, let's throw this artillery in too. Okay, that gives me a little bit more firepower because knowing that there's regimental aspects to that one. I already checked this one. You can't do that in a real game, but the point is, you know, I haven't played for a week. You know, I certainly, a little less than that, but I certainly haven't played where I was using those stacks for that long. So this seems like a good time for that. All right, let's see what happens. Yeah, that didn't work out too well. The reason I grabbed 10-sided dice is the amount of air power. It wasn't all my air power this time, so I couldn't just leave it on the track. And remember, I got to clear it all out. And it was such a high number, I couldn't represent it with 6-siders. But also the 10-sided dice served for the armored movement costs. Anyway, what happened was, yeah, I chased the first one off the road, big deal, caused a little bit more casualties than I took. The second stack, I hit, got about even casualties, ran off and blew this thing up, which was pretty easy, actually. Although I think I forgot and took free fire into account where it didn't count, but I'm not positive, but I think it was down here somewhere. And then I went back and hit this thing again, which was probably a mistake, and got hurt more than I did damage. A little bit more, not much. But you do not want to trade US replacements for VC ones, not by any means. Even NVA ones, it's a bad deal. Like Arvin for NVA is probably about fair. I can't figure out how to do that though. And so then I swung back around, found a guy down here to pick at, and yeah, you know, I did some damage without taking any real casualties, and then I drove back and parked myself here. Yeah, there was nothing else I could attack. I basically had not enough movement points to do anything further. And it was pretty damn ineffectual, to tell you the truth. It's one of the problems with security operations. You need like fairly heavy force, and you can clear a bunch of little stacks from the road, or something like this. This was all little units. I had what I thought was way more force than I would normally use for a security operation. Normally I'm just driving one unit off the road, you know, separate little 1-unit pieces off the road. And I'm like, well, it's a pain in the ass to do, but if the VC is set up for that, great, we'll do it. However, trying to take the big units on with them, even using air power and everything, man, the trade-offs just weren't coming good enough. And I'm beginning to think the pure firepower solution is the only way to handle those big stacks. Because remember, this is not as powerful as the NVA divisions, right? And so I certainly shouldn't be going off security operationing them. The biggest thing that I lose in the security operation is I lose the pursuit bonus. The pursuit bonus, first of all, it allows you to keep chasing units, and secondly, if you can keep them from running very far and you're air mobile and all that, you can usually hit them with a big bonus on here and start doing real casualties that are obviously growing, and the opponent will just dissolve or whatever with VC, or stop spending his replacement points with the NVA and say, fine, kill me. It's not going to go well. Other options are running for the border and forcing you to make another choice, leaving free fire zones if they're present, stuff like that. But, that all makes sense to me a little bit more. The security operation, man, it's not the way to clear a stack from the road. And as to clearing a lot of little units off the road, well, the security operation has the problem that guys who are just a little off the road are going to screw it up just as much as they do some of the other operations. So really, I might be doing one late in the second turn of the season, but that's probably about it. And I feel like I've done enough here that I can call this my day's work. I'm serious. I mean, I am really having trouble coming up and facing this because I got to make a big decision each time, and I just do not know how to get a grasp on what the crap I'm facing. I don't know how much longer I'm going to last. This is kind of feeling fruitless to me. And not in the sense that, oh, geez, the U.S. can't possibly hang on, but just in the sense that I just don't want to keep facing this repetitive action that the early part of the game was dissuading me from. And now my poor brain can't handle figuring out how to resolve the problem again and again and again. Different problems, being faced with different challenges. I'm getting too old, I don't know. I was never good at figuring out problems. I think, I don't know if I explained that before, how stupid I feel with this and not noticing certain things that seem like great ideas. But then I start thinking, I couldn't fucking figure out simple stuff like the every other hex defensive thing without reading it in a Dunnigan book. It's like these kind of patterns. I'm not good at translating what the game is showing to the reality very well with any games, I guess. What I'm good at doing is when something seems clear to me, not making those leaps or even little jumps of cleverness, but rather starting to mechanically apply certain principles, I guess, that I've learned over time. And I try to impart them on other people when I'm playing, but I don't know, I'm not a very good teacher either, I guess. What this means is I'm going to relegate security missions to what they're intended for, clearing the roads, so that I can make strategic moves. And I'm not seeing any strategic moves that I absolutely feel any real requirement to make, actually, at this point. And no real need to clear the roads for those either, which means I'll enter sort of the normal operations of a turn. Now, the one thing that's a little different is I have to make choices with the VC here. Do I want to leave them in exposed positions? Some of them on roads, which could be attacked. Or do I want to jump away? Currently, I think most of the places, I'm willing to just leave them and let them perhaps suffer a worse initial attack in order to preserve some of their mobility. Because once a unit's operated, it's a little iffier that you can keep it in a survival mode. Basically, it could get chased into a position where it's on a road then, and then hit, and bad stuff happens. Let me think of the why of that. So bad stuff happens if it's in clear terrain. If it's on a road in particular, I don't know if it's that terrible for it. But yeah, we've got places where they're out in, cultivated terrain, and it just does not particularly provide them with a lot of defensive capabilities. So there's some danger that I'm going to lose more of my VC than I have previously. I'm not too worried about these big stacks. We saw that that's hard to attack. The U.S. is going to have to throw a great deal of effort into that to pursue and knock that out. On the other hand, I'm a little worried that, it is kind of exposed. Because if it can be attacked, I can pursue the shit out of it and get a big bag for body count all at once. This one and this one, I don't see a lot near them. I would have to basically send a fairly strong air mobile force in to deal with either of those. And this one actually is an NVA division kicking around down there. There aren't a lot of really big stacks, but there are some moderate-sized stacks. They're a little exposed. I find spreading out works a little better, but if I consolidate anyway, it doesn't really matter. The spreading out is more important, I think, in terms of getting the population changes, which I don't know where I've got that sheet, probably over here, into play. I don't think I'm going to actually move a piece. I think I'm just going to think at this point. But these thoughts, the changes that the game takes place, these are necessary. And do I have to do them on video? No, I don't. And I don't know how valuable they are to anyone. So as I'm going with mainly U.S. operations now, Vienna LF has kind of decided, yeah, go ahead, do what you want. You can see I started doing some of my normal hunting again. I'm afraid of those big stacks of NVA units. Besides, let me try out that firepower concept. Now, I picked the wrong stack to go after. I picked one with some VC on it. Dropped the area's free fire, so I only had to drop 4 firepower on it. But it got me out, to this chart. I got a shitty roll, I think, which caused 1 loss, one VC loss. Basically, as long as you cover those things with VC, you're not going to take too painful a loss from each firepower exercise. Now, it can add up. There's no question of that. If you see this as an attrition game, which unfortunately I think it really is, but I'm having a hard time coping with that aspect of it, you may have to go with that. However, it seems so much cooler to go out, grab my body bags, even if I'm not causing actual casualties, if this number just keeps growing, I'm getting something for it that feels real. When I just cause a replacement point to be lost off the VC chart, wow, that doesn't feel very impressive at all. I may try some bombardment somewhere else, but the problem is, if I don't free fire the area, I have to spend 8 air power to do it. And there's a chance I might lose an air unit. As long as I can hunt regular units, I feel like I have much, much greater comfort with what I'm doing. Dropping these bombs on things, well, if I'm able to target something like this that's out in the open on its own, maybe that's worthwhile. That's 21 strength points. I dropped the 4, that puts it to the 25. That puts it on this table. I'll be able to probably cause 2 casualties to their replacements with each bombardment. They might not want to stick around for that. They may want to get into better terrain. They may want to cover themselves with a VC unit, though. That's the most likely. And as long as they're doing that, then it becomes a lot less valuable to me, because trading that firepower just to cut down VC replacements doesn't seem that valuable to me. Now, I may be wrong, because all those replacements were damn helpful when I launched that offensive. To figure out a way to deal with the NVA stacked mass divisions, especially with some VC support in them, it would be really cool, because if they spread out, I just hit an artillery unit that was over here as the target. Throwing reinforcements in, I've got a good attack here with a nice pursuit modifier, like a +4 pursuit modifier, which makes up for the fact that now, I'm attacking at 1-to-1 or whatever. I haven't figured out my total numbers yet. Get some air power associated with it. I'll keep that there so I can remember. Brought some naval assets in. I did the wrong thing by retreating into the hex where it looked like it was defended, because that allowed the ARVN units to come charging in mass. And, now I'm in a battle that maybe I can't win with the NVA, and I may lose an entire division because of it. Ended up being a pretty nice little operation, honestly. But again, special circumstances. I left an artillery on its own. There's no alert movement. There could have been a reaction move that I didn't account for. That could have made things really ugly for that first stack of units. Had I thrown everything in, then the artillery that got caught alone could have been killed on its own. Oops, fucked up, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Because, I don't know. I'm going to fuck so much up in this game. I'm just in halves already. So why it was so effective was that special circumstance plus cheating. But the fact that I was able to catch that artillery alone, it didn't just dissolve, it ran into the rest of the stack. The rest of the stack got hit then by reinforcements, including, it was sufficient to not only destroy the artillery that caused the problem to begin with, but I took out about 18 replacements. Now, those weren't all NVA replacements. The VC were able to absorb 6 of them. So 12 NVA replacements. The cost to Arvin was maybe 4 or 5, right? But I did use up a lot of power as well. An Arvin division, my Navy, some air power, some additional artillery, including one of my heavy artilleries that got thrown in as a reinforcement. And basically, once I got out of range of the artillery, even though I had a decent pursuit modifier, the NVA were able to jump into a hill area, wooded hills, and I'm like, you know what? I could boost some of these units so that they could make it there, including some of the artillery, but the boats aren't going to be involved. It's too far from the fucking coast. Okay, the fucking stack, the coast is not a problem. And, I'm not going to get great results out of what's left. I might end up with a choice to invade Cambodia, which I don't really want to do if I can help it. I find myself sprinkling these free fires a lot more liberally than I did at the beginning of the game. The threat is too big now. Those big units and big collections of units that are happening, especially in areas where there's not a lot of VC popular support anyway, so it doesn't hurt that much if I can get rid of all of the units that are in the area, or that the area, so that's the 4th Corps where there's not a lot of VC popular support. Over here, these areas are basically VC controlled, so fuck it, just drop the bombs, man. Throw some Agent Orange in, make the area as uninhabitable as possible. You're not going to piss off people who are going to love you anyway. The only thing you can do is get a handle on the enemy troops. And once you do that, then you start to think about, can we secure that area? Right now, most of the areas where there's VC are pretty, where there's heavy concentrations of VC, are pretty heavily in the VC's hands. That's this strip here that's really, and then over near Tainin. Over here, this is a little harder to make the choice in, but I got to get rid of those big NVA units. I got to clear them from the board. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. An operation did not go as well. I got some Rangers hiding in here that I got to get off the board. I used Arvin 21st Division, a lot of its assets. Maybe even thrown in a 1st Division asset in here. Artillery on top. I think it says 21st. And hit units here with the intention that if they entered in, I would have 2-to-1 odds, which isn't great, but with overwhelming firepower, I was able to do a little bit better losses. I think I did 4-2 or something like that. I'm willing to trade NVA for Arvin at equal. I think that's fair. Of course, I did have to open up a couple free fire zones. One of them in Sadek, because that's where I was expecting this to end up going in order to get into these. What I did not do was I didn't manage to lay down enough extra air power to prevent him from running away in time. Just a little bit more air power, 3 more points, and he would have only been able to get to this hex, which would then mean that I would get another attack. The problem being it was a capital. I couldn't pursue out of the capital. my fuck up. I'm gonna let this one sit on the other end. You know, just hopes that it kind of balances out the attack there. But you can see I'm free firing all kind of shit. This is gonna cause me real problems in the population side. Also, as a follow up, I played a little bit of Nevsky. I played sort of the introductory first scenario, whatever, which is really quite small, but the concepts in the game are very, very different from what I've seen in anything else. It kind of captures a chevauché, and I'm pretty excited. So I think at the end of this season, I'm not necessarily going to clean this up. In fact, I don't think I'm going to, but I'm going to see if I can get another table in place, or if there's enough room over there, if I clear that up, and take a little break from this and play the Nevsky campaign. New game, very excited about it. Volko seems to have done something really, really cool with it that I didn't think could be done easily. Certainly not with normal design principles. I'm having a lot of trouble catching the VC again. Arvin units here, they're squishing out of the way. Yeah, it's Arvin. But even with the first cav hitting over here, I'm seeing most of the VC. I had one dissolution just popping away, sliding into the darkness. You know, I think that +1 that I started illicitly adding, and I know why it happened actually, was actually a huge, huge difference in terms of what it was allowing me to build up the body counts. Because if I throw, so the reason it happened was it's 2 points for leaving an enemy occupied space +1 for an almost default 1 point of interdiction that I throw into a fight. But 1 point of interdiction, I mean, it just, the 1 point of interdiction isn't quite enough. So what was happening was I was counting that 3 and then just ended up adding the extra 1. And that was the difference in a lot of ways to where I was getting so much effectiveness. Getting 2 points of interdiction costs, without free fire, 14 points of firepower. Getting 1 point only costs 6. 6 is not that hard to come up with. And then on the other hand, these huge stacks, I can't cope with them with what I have available right now. Maybe if I had sent the whole division in or something, it would have been able to deal with it. But I wanted to clear the area around here particularly. And I don't know why I didn't free fire Fuyan. Fuyan is, I think, in pretty bad shape. Well, I still have some population in Fuyan. I don't know. But I'm really struggling with the U.S. That offensive and taking away that secret bonus where somehow I was getting an extra point of interdiction out of everything or whatever. It wasn't even an extra point of interdiction because it didn't cost me extra to leave the hex, so whatever. But the situation as it's standing, I'm getting almost no traction where I was like really kicking ass with that extra point there. I'm puttering around trying to find myself some kind of momentum, spirit, usage for the U.S. that kind of works. And I've used most of the U.S. forces on the board. We had a little bit of chasing here. None of it was really working very well. But then I found myself in a position where I was getting really frustrated. And that's when I do wise things, apparently. I don't know how wise it is. I launched an Arvin division and a couple of components of, I guess, 1st Marine here. I don't know. There's some 3rd Marine hanging around where it didn't belong because of a security operation. But yeah, these are a couple of 1st Marine units that moved in with it, along with a lot of artillery. I sent like 3 U.S. artillery units, ended up air mobilizing them all so that they could chase. And hit the remnants of a division. It was basically 2 units of an NVA division, a VC unit. I'm not going to say the results were spectacular, but they were okay. We ended up getting a kill here on one of the regiments, And you can see I've got their replacements way down. I was able to take some of my losses on Arvin, although the later part during the pursuit, that was all US units. The Arvin units just aren't fast enough. Maybe if I could upgrade them someday. That one was. Yeah, they're all upgraded. Yeah, they're still not impressive enough. The U.S. units are a little bit faster, and the advantage of hitting with less manpower and more firepower, and the balance came out really well. It's not a kind of number crunching I'd want to do very often, but it's physically possible to get the edge on one of those divisions if you have enough forces surrounding it. I don't think I can do anything about these guys. I just don't have the forces in the area. Like here I have 1 battalion. That's not going to do it. But I got to start thinking about where I want to move things, because at any point the NBA player can say, yeah, I'm good, and end the turn. So I would like to reposition some of the US units. On the other hand, figuring out moving, doing a couple little operations has gotten really, really expensive, in part because some of my US formations got kind of moved around during the offensive in a way that they weren't coordinated very well. I had to do like a strategic movement to get a part of the 3rd Marine back up here, stuff like that. It's really a shame, because I really want to get away from this and play something else. That's kind of motivating me to actually play a little bit, but still, I can come up and I can face a very little part. Another factor in the delay, and this has been the truth since I moved to this house, is having to come up here to play. Now, I gotta say, other factors in the other place I was in Eugene also prevented me from being very comfortable playing games here. It's almost like there's certain physical limitations to what and where I can play. I got a cold room, my curly room, where I have most of my Euros on shelves. That's an absolute mess because of the flooding. I had to move all kind of crap into there to keep it dry, because that room was like the one place that stayed dry. Thank the heavens on that one. But and I'm still waiting for some carpenters and electricians that I haven't been able to arrange things with, because I'm not capable of doing that kind of stuff. I got the electricians in to hook up the sump pump, but now I got to put the walls back on, and it's a little more than I can do. The walls themselves I maybe could do with a nail gun or something, but they have to put some of the framing back in place. And yeah, I tried to get a hold of someone, and now I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, I really don't have a second game room at this point. Although that room's not great for gaming because my wife's next to it. She can't handle the noise of me videoing. And I could do it at this level. The room where I kind of store some clothing, I have too many rooms, none of which I actually use. But yeah, that would be a little bit more comfortable, but during the winter, that doesn't really work very well. So, and this was always the place where I wanted to do the gaming, but it's not like the stairs are that hard for me. I'm a little injured, but emotionally, the attitude of, oh, I got to climb up the stairs, and then it's not something I can do while I'm doing other things like boiling tea or whatever, so I can't steal away and get a few moments. I just don't come up here the way I used to. I'd wake up before work and walk into the room where I gamed, and I'd look at the game, and even if I didn't do anything, it would be on my mind for the whole day at that point. Now it's out of sight, out of mind up here, and that's kind of problematic. I thought it would work. It's not. Not with something this big that I dread. Well, yesterday I wasn't able to dance, which sucks. My foot has been giving me so much trouble, actually both of them, but mainly my left one, that I've been trying wrapping it. That hurts it more. I should really go to a doctor, but I'm not the kind of person who can. But anyway, I'm going to try to play a little bit more today. And I figured I have sort of my last checkpoint that's of reason here, which is the after Tet scenario. I was like, let's see how I'm doing compared to that. And I did a quick look. I don't know when it starts. First turn of spring of 68, so it actually starts when I did Tet, but okay, so some of it is use the Tet values, but some of it's not. So the post-Tet U.S. morale is 410. Well, my morale is 467. So I'm a little higher on morale. However, one thing we can see here, this is actually starting with Tet, I think, because there's an offensive. Commitment is 340, and my commitment is only 219, showing that I've been ramping up more slowly, which I was, certainly more slowly than people have been advising me to still. SVN population is 240. Yeah, I'm nowhere near that. Again, maybe the higher ramp up is more valuable overall because SVN morale is only 115 though. Well, that's higher than my 70s. And SVN draft is at 107 again, higher than where I am. So there seems to be a payoff to coming in harder, but the problem, of course, is the U.S.'s staying power is less if they ramp up too hard. And that's kind of what I'm hoping I catch up with. For North Vietnam, we should also see lower numbers, I hope. We have an NVN morale of 273 here. Here they're saying 270. Uh-oh. How's that happening? I'm not sure. Because most of the North Vietnamese morale comes off commitment and morale. So I almost feel like if I'm getting the same numbers as they get here with slower commitment, maybe these numbers aren't capable of being reached in the game. Maybe you'll end up with too much NVN commitment by this point. Of course, I am a turn later, but whatever. Anything else on here that I can say? VC population controlled is only 110. Well, I got more than that. Got 141. VC draft is 445. I'm well below that, but I have not recorded the additional draft. Oops. Yeah, I didn't record the information for the VC. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. I would notice that hopefully before I threw away my points. And VC supply pool doesn't tell me much. VC draft 383. I'm not going to be that high, which means historically they're estimating that the VC expended more effort on, or the NLF expended more effort on their VC than I've been doing, for whatever reason. I am getting kind of a feeling that maybe these numbers don't match. Like, if I'm getting, the big thing that I'm concerned about is that NVA draft level. The NVA commitment. If higher U.S. commitment caused the same VC levels, I don't know how that can happen. I may be screwing something up, which would also be bad. Not as bad as if the game itself was causing a problem. Yeah, here. So the only things that happen here is the points from U.S. commitment, which is these two, the rate of U.S. commitment coming in, and the current North Vietnamese morale, which is entirely based on the U.S. commitment. So what they're postulating is something that I don't understand. You know, maybe the U.S. commitment pattern was not sort of steady state, but was very weak to begin with, and then came in a flood or something. I don't know, but that's where we're at. They don't care about, you know, the events in South Vietnam at all, which could have influenced things. All they care about is that U.S. commitment rate. Follow up, I wanted to check the TET values, because these change a little bit in the after TET, but not much. Basically, like, there's some additional error points, but I think they're used in strategic bombing. Support available. Okay, so now wait, this is, I'm pretty sure this is spring. Yeah, this is spring. So this is not after TET. This is TET and after. So it starts you with the TET value. I'm not really paying attention to all the different units that are in play. Obviously, there's going to be more in play if the commitment's higher, but this is the biggie, 95 U.S. replacement points. Man, you know, I'm lucky if I hit around 30. Of course, there could have been there was a build-up for TET, which meant less, maybe VC presence on the board. 75 ARVN replacement points. 90 air points, I have that. 24 air mobile, that's about right. 4 riverine, I'm heavier than that, but not by much. And 2 cruisers, I think I'm at 3, but I'm not, I may only be at 2. And 5 ARVN Rangers. That extra ARVN Ranger could, of course, be helpful. But overall, other than the replacement point difference, I'm not sure how much there is. I don't really want to go through all the different units and see what I have committed, you know, what extra is committed here that I don't have and whatever. I don't know how much that's going to be a big deal. I actually feel like most of the extra commitment is probably replacement points for covering a more willing to sustain casualties U.S. policy. There probably is an extra division on the board or something, but anyway, I'm beginning, let me just catch you up to where I am. I'm beginning to do, although there's been a couple of U.S. Intervention over here to squish another unit or something. I'm beginning to pull NVA divisions down deeper into 4th Corps. That's going to force some reallocations, or else good die rolls in 4th Corps for things to work well. And also, like, this guy didn't move, but I threw some additional resources in there to make him a little bit more defensive. I'm making sure I have VCs in there. VCs moving from the Vin Bin area where I have, you know, the capacity to produce more stuff down further south, because I'm kind of protected by these NVA divisions. You know? You're not going to see little U.S. units walking around down there. They're too easy to get stomped and cause all kind of massive problems. And then as I work here, you can see this is mainly VC operations. I'm collecting up those VC divisions and making them pretty damn obvious on the map. But the reason for that is they're almost as indestructible as the NVA divisions. I mean, they're not quite as big, but sitting in nasty terrain, man, I don't want to mess with that shit. And by keeping them together and and trying to get them into big places, you know, I'm doing things like grabbing towns and stuff like that, just to help shift the population more than spreading them out when they're just getting squished. Even those 6.2s can get squished, although in that terrain, maybe not so much. This is vulnerable to a security operation, but it's going to be a big operation to get them off of 1 hex of road and not be able to pursue them. So I've become less afraid of security. I have not done anything yet up in the north with the VC, but again, we're at the winding down period of the turn. This stack, I think, is where it wants to be, to tell you the truth. We'll see. Okay, I think I cleaned up the north to the degree that I wanted to. I didn't move everything. Maybe I want to get this guy out of Khartoum. He's got a long way to go to get out of free fire zones, and it might be wise. But for the most part, yeah. I mean, Fuban's free fire, but I don't feel like these guys are too much at risk, and I might want to move them too. I've got these guys kind of exposed out here in cultivated terrain. but there's not a lot of U.S. forces around. I'm just kind of like, gee, where do I need to do things? Where do I not? Free fires in the places where they're put are probably enough to keep those areas to zero South Vietnamese support. Where they're not placed, well, I could make some big dents. So you see, I moved up into Quang Tri and Thu Thien, which are both kind of pro-U.S. Areas at this point. From south of there, we get into kind of where the VC is very strong. And, you know, in some cases, these poor guys, yeah, I'm going to move some more units out of the way. It's just a matter of, wow, you know, how much do I want to shuffle those forces south, because north doesn't look like it's particularly, I'm not going to get into richer areas. I'd really like to put a fight up into at the end though, so maybe I want to position myself more for that than trying to keep funneling troops south into, again, U.S. stronghold is over here as well. You know, basically the VC has strength through the center here, and then up there, and that's really it. And then some spot places in Fourth Corps that just have not been able to be improved upon for whatever reason. And I think we're all set for the bottom half of the season. One of the things time-wise in terms of what this is eating up, you know, whatever the motivation factor more than anything else, but well, a few things. One of the things is turns are ending quicker due to the lack of ops complete markers, just because, like, geez, it's getting to be a pain in the ass. The shirt I'm wearing, which kind of dangles a little more or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff starts affecting the play in this, just because there's so much detail and so much trying to do the same stuff. But another thing, in terms of like my motivation to play being so damn weak, I was hoping Nevsky would kind of win me over to push through a little harder. But, you know, I mean, it took me a week to finish one turn. It shouldn't be doing that. Most of that turn was done in a couple of sessions, but a lot of times I'm coming up and moving just a piece or two and then saying, I can't handle it for a couple of days. Now, I guess what I wanted to reflect, yes, I made some of those moves that I had seen before, pulled all the ops complete markers that I could see off the map, and our casualties right now aren't that bad, actually. 10, 11, 12, 13, and 6 is 19. That means I'm probably going to hit the body bag count, you know, on this turn and gain some morale off of it, which I need because that offensive really dropped me down pretty hard. Also, points coming back, we basically lost an air point over the course of the turn. That's it. You can see we lost about 10 reps. I was above 30 at the beginning of the turn, but we cost the NVA quite a bit, and that's pretty cool. But we did take a lot of Arvin hits too, and I got to get those replacement points back up and start funneling more and more of them in, because I saw, you know, the problem with not having them. But on the other hand, the NVA needs to get its up, especially if it's like moving down into, you know, into deeper and deeper into enemy territory. And there's real problems with doing that. And I'm doing that across the board because it's so easy to get things right across the border. If I can pull U.S. troops off the border, then units that come right across the border will be more effective. And just keep pushing pressure on. All right. Wow. The beginning of turns is just so tough for me. I mean, it really is. I did a little bit of, I did a strategic move up there. There was a piece that I hadn't removed the ops complete marker from. There's always a few that I miss that I discover as I'm playing, you know, like here, there might be one there. I don't know. But yeah, I did a strategic move to go grab a capital that was undefended and with some paratroopers who I can't use for anything because they're out of command or not effective right now. But I just look over the whole thing and I'm like, geez, does the U.S. want to do anything? Obviously they want to start, squishing things. But the really hard call is, do I want to do the security operation to try to clear something like Quinam here? And I just don't know the answer. Something like a security operation, I can go anywhere. I can go from almost anywhere on the board and get there, although it might be difficult in some places. Like, here I'd have to pass through a zone of control, so I'd have to come down this way, and then this actually misses any zones, and I'd be able to hit, so that's fine. Coming from up here, there's a zone going into here that I'd have to worry about. Could I get something from here? Well, yeah, it looks like I could get down there from there, just tracing the roads. And one of the problems is the borders between provinces look not too dissimilar to roads under my lighting and with my eyes. So, but yeah, I'm left with this paralyzed, well, what do I do? Even though I just got done with a turn and kind of went through, this not that long ago, I guess. But it's much, much easier once you've moved most of your pieces to start moving the remaining ones and doing shit with them. Back a little bit on, some of the concepts of the game, why it's taking so long, etc. Well, and this time it's not just me sort of complaining about my own circumstances. I don't think it's actually all my circumstances. Some of it I think is kind of baked into the game, and maybe in conjunction with my personality in terms of playing things. But I don't think that it's individual to me that coming up and facing a new turn is hard. I'm finding when there are a lot of options across the whole map that it takes a lot of time to settle on what I want to do. Most games of this size, I feel that I can generally make the little decisions on autopilot. I might have to make big decisions as to the overall scope and plan of the game, etc. I don't feel like I'm making too much of that. I'm not spending all that much time on, hey, am I going to be hunting, for body count? Am I going to be trying to clear certain provinces? Like with Fuban now, I'm kind of putting some more effort into there. That doesn't feel like it's really the option. The option is looking across at all the different sectors of the board and saying, what is the move that I have to make? It's almost like a giant Go game, But with Go, even though there's a huge state space, it's nowhere near the size of this. And because whatever move I take, the other person can then, generally, the NLF can take a series of moves, but they don't usually want to. The other person can step in, as the US, the other person can step in and interfere with my plan. So I've got to be very careful in what I'm doing on a small scale. Once I get deeper into the turn, there aren't that many actions left, and they start, the space that I have, the decision space that I have to make choices in gets smaller and smaller, and it becomes, I have used up my air points, so a lot of my units can't do anything anymore. I've used up certain units, so certain areas of the board are pretty much out of my reach, and I can focus in and zoom in on things. But I think that even if I were playing this a little differently and sitting here as the US, making, decisions across from an opponent, whatever, I would have the same kind of problem at the beginning of a turn when faced with so many different choices. And similarly, with the NLF, if I'm playing an offensive, I might feel the same kind of choices. I don't feel like the NLF has that hard a job in general through most of the game. But anyway, I looked at, I came up here, I didn't feel like I was completely lost or anything like that. When I made the last couple actions that I made, I don't know what I did. I did some actions down here with the 101st, and the first cab. Not exactly the units I'd want to commit, but I just could not make a decision on any of the other places. So I'm kind of like, well, things will get simpler if I start doing some stuff down here. Well, again, probably not the optimal choices to move those because they have a lot of flexibility. But, you know, I cleared out Long Con and I started doing some effort here in Fujian, Fuban region that seemed like easier choices to make and reducing that decision space. Now I've eaten up most of the middle of the board and I have this problem here and then the big problem down there. Of course, I have to keep looking around. Hey, is second division capable of doing anything about any of the stuff that's there? I don't know, maybe, you know. But when you try to figure out an operation, some of the times, if you're not on kind of that autopilot type situation where you're like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of loose VC that I can go hunt or something like that that I find easy to deal with, you have to do a lot of calculation, a lot of thought, and then try to decide, are you pulling the trigger on that operation? And for me, that can take 10 to 20 minutes, you know, to make the decision, especially when there are a lot of different choices. Why a lot of different choices? Well, I look at one and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. Okay, let's go see somewhere else. And that's why I ended up doing these guys, because I could pull the trigger on those operations, even though, again, I probably would have been better off doing other operations. And so actually conducting the operations maybe took a minute or two each, because none of them were, you know, big pursuit type situations. None of them were things that sort of spilled over across multiple units or anything like that. They were fairly easy operations to take care of. The problematic ones that I couldn't pull the trigger on, I'm not so sure are going to end up that easy. But again, you know, you look at all these little tiny actions you have to take. Well, when things are going well, when you can do it on autopilot, yeah, they take a minute or two each. When they're not doing well, it becomes really, really excruciatingly expensive. Too much thought, too much decision making for my tastes. Of course, for other people, this might be, you know, the grail, right? Because you're having to make significant decisions across this huge game, you know? And I can definitely appreciate that. For me, I even kind of enjoy it to some extent, but that heavy decision-making burden wears on me pretty fast. In the midst of a kind of massive operation, I sent a U.S. regiment and again an ARVN division. That seems to work really well with a lot of firepower support, all artillery in this case, chasing an NVA division, and I've knocked it down to really just one regiment at this point. I was kind of afraid to hit it because I thought, wow, they'll have too easy a way of getting into Cambodia, but they don't get that alert movement. So I was able to get one good hit in, and then the follow-up was good, and they, you know, still aren't very flexible in terms of being able to run away very fast. Though they're going to be able to run into Cambodia, and I doubt that I want to chase them. But I've done massive amounts of damage in the exchange for a couple of ARVN replacements. Really good trade-off. And not only is it massive damage, but it's massive damage that they couldn't absorb all of it, so they're taking real hits off of it, which is great for my body bag count as well. Of course, you know, it is a lot of resources that went into it, but not that much when you think about it. You know, I'm getting a better payoff than I think I would in terms of, say, picking off. What could that pick off? Well, the ARVN units aren't very good at chasing down VC. The U.S. units obviously are pretty good at that. Since I had 3 separate battalions of U.S., in this kind of terrain, they could have shot down 3 VC units. But instead, I've managed to kill a VC unit and a couple of NVA units, which honestly is pretty damn good. Yeah, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed with what this was able to do given how close to the border it was. And I actually decided to pursue into Cambodia. And I immediately subtracted the morale value from the U.S. morale. And I got a bad roll. I only pursued with my ARVN units because, I don't know, I was able to get the first round of combat, get all my artillery. I mean, I pursued with the other stuff, but they didn't invade. I was able to get my artillery in range that it could fire, and I've wiped out that entire division at a cost of 3 morale. How big a deal is that? Well, I got a terrible roll on the ARVN invasion of Cambodia, but now ARVN operations can push into Cambodia this turn. I want to get them out of there, but yeah. So that's kind of a cool facet to it. I have to say, my first calculations, my first thoughts about launching these attacks was they wouldn't work out very well. You throw enough firepower in, and yeah, you can get to that 2-to-1 or whatever. You catch them in good terrain, like I did. You can turn them into hamburger, basically, which is pretty sweet. There's some serious problems because the NVA is out of replacement points after that fight. And I got a couple of big stacks that, yeah, they're covered with some VC, but that are maybe exposed to ground strikes. So we're talking about 21 plus whatever. Plus I got to get at least 4 effective firepower into there, so that puts it up to 25 on the table, which is around here. There's no modifiers because of the terrain. If that's a small VC unit on there, I could be destroying NVA units regularly. So I think I better check and make sure that I got enough covering them. And it looks like I do, but I may want to move these divisions and get them out of the firing zone. If I can get them up using strategic movement or whatever into a place that's a little better protected, or maybe even the trail, and just give up on this incursion that I made deep into U.S. territory because I can't support it anymore. And worse, it's not the only places. They're not just down there. I mean, I can kill a lot of VC points, replacement points, by just continual bombardment. And I don't have to commit the big firepower now because there's no more, there's no more NVA replacements on those. The problem is, of course, here there's enough VC clearly that whatever I drop is just going to be VC points. Killing 3 or 4 VC points, is that worth it for, 8 firepower? Yeah, maybe. That's better than I generally do hunting a unit, and I'll often throw in, 6, 10 firepower into such. So those things may just be asking for it, and they may have to clear out of the locations there. And this has a -1 because of the town there. I made such deep incursions with those NVA units. I'm not in a position where I could get off onto the Ho Chi Minh Trail where I'm kind of safe, because you can't bomb units on the trail, you can bomb the trail itself. At least if I recall correctly. So these guys ran into the mountains in Phu Yen where it's not free fire yet, and they've got a decent number of VC units in there, so they feel fairly safe about that. I may take a jump to get some more units into that capital, because that's kind of hard for the U.S. to reach. They're going to have to air mobilize to get there. However, maybe I don't want to defend it. Maybe I just give it up. Over here, I was able to make it into Ken Tong and Ba Zuyan. Again, probably if the U.S. is going to start bombing them. Now, this is shooting fish in a barrel at this point, at least in terms of getting VC points, and maybe I will be hitting NVA units. There's not much that the NLF can do to protect these guys. So, this thing, it's in a town, that's a -1. This one's in a swamp, that's a -1. It gives them some defensive capability, but not a whole hell of a lot. And I think I'm gonna start plinking them because that's low impact attacks on people. Despite some of the happiness I had with the US hitting some things and doing some real damage, I'm also running into problems. I've hit a couple of stacks up here of VC that were bigger than expected. They cost me some damage. You can see US replacements cutting down again. ARVN replacements getting down towards a critical level where they might start losing pieces. ARVN units losing pieces isn't like, it doesn't affect morale, but it's still not a good thing. ARVN forces are not necessarily, they're certainly not free. You know, I'm going to have to bring supplies in to rebuild them, just like I would with the replacements. But also, there's a manpower limit in both cases, which is to say, I don't know where I'm at right now. There's 209 population available. I've used up about half of that already. So ARVN's capability to stay in the fight is degrading, and there might come a point where they just don't have the population. I haven't seen the surge in population that the historical scenario seems to show happened. I don't, you know, honestly, I feel like, yeah, but this is pure speculation here, but I feel like the kind of growth in population that appears to have happened is perhaps not actually possible. I've never, but again, I don't ramp up as hard, but I've never seen it do much better than I've got, you know. I don't know, what did we start at? I want to say 170, but that's just not correct. Yeah, I mean, we're kicking around about where we were in 66. I don't have the 65 numbers, but it's basically, I'm able to keep it steady. And even in areas that are clear, it doesn't grow very fast. Sort of winding down for the US, actually one of my restrictions. There's always a limitation on what the US can do. In this case, the first one that came to mind is actually the boats down in 4th Corps. If I had more boat capability, I could be moving and doing more with my ARVN units, but that's just not there. We've largely cleared the Long Con. Long Con was actually a problem not long ago. Long Con, Binh Thuan, this area in here. That's all cleared out. However, Tuyen Duc, like I said, I ran into some nasty stuff, and I don't really feel like I've got enough force to deal with something like this, so we're having difficulties there. Now that's mainly VC controlled already. There's this huge force in Con Hoa, which I really ought to be dealing with, but nothing's being done about that, and I don't have troops to do so. Phu Yen, also another big stack. Nothing I can really do about that. That's the escape from down here. And then, you know, north of there, this is the VC sort of central area. Up here, we were able to chase away some of the VC. Over here, not so much. I look around, I've got a headquarters that didn't get to do anything. It got to lend support, but it didn't actually have to become ops complete to do so. So, you know, there's a couple little things on the edge that I might be able to do. I got a, worst comes to worst, I got a couple more blasts on that stack. Cut this number, which has grown as we got our casualty numbers up. What are we at? 24, 28, and 6 times 3 is 30, something like 46 points. That's going to be a significant amount of morale going to the US. So we're actually doing a lot of damage, and we're beginning to get South Vietnam back, you know, under control. It's a big task. Those NVA divisions, they take a lot of effort to blow up, but doing so is clearly worth the cost if you can actually, you know, get enough firepower devoted to them. Elsewhere, yeah, we have messes. We have messes to clean up that are left over from that offensive, but and I don't know you know, I don't know what to do because I know there's another offensive going to come. Didn't happen this turn, but it's going to happen. Maybe one a year, maybe 2 a year. I don't know. So the U.S. did a couple more minor operations, including one with the, I think those are Koreans, and an airstrike down there, some repositioning type moves. Then they kind of let the NLF do whatever the hell it wanted. Pretty much very clear this is the end of the turn, you know, when that happens, unless you step into something that's clearly bad. Like if I'd gotten within range of the 2nd Division, the ARVN 2nd Division, that would be a problem. So you can see kind of, you know, that coordinating kind of works because I can't just pass through them without getting myself into maybe an ugly position. So I shy away. You have a lot more effort going into, yes, what was a free fire zone, but it won't be very soon. Hey, I might as well take a blink at this, right? I don't know. 7 artillery, let's see what I'm hitting. It's at big minuses. 7 and 12 is like 19. This is how I kind of end things, is a couple of these suckers, but at -3, 2, I do no damage. And I'd get a little control, an ops complete marker there, but I'm not going to worry about it because I am really done. I just happened to notice that as I'm talking, and I figure, well, let's take care of it real quick. You have VC trying to infiltrate north again. Thuetian, especially up here. It's very heavily pro-US, as is whatever the hell this is, Quang Tri. And trying to ooze our way down into the Binh Thuan region. This whole area is just so well controlled by the US. We want to get back in there, of course, and part of the reason it's well controlled is there's a lot of troops kicking around there. Every time I ooze in, I get schwacked. Or on the way down, but I got a big force heading down there. I got a couple of big sets of units, and those are kind of frightening as to, hey, what can I do about them? I'm gonna, even though we're already over the hour limit, I'm gonna go through the fall prep part of the turn in order to just because there's decisions that are made there that I feel like I kind of want to be aware of what I've just done. So I'll take care of that, and then we'll load this up, and we'll get to Nevsky, which is what I really, really want to do right now. I think we're going to kind of do that because this is taking so damn long, is start trying to squeeze in other games in between. Now that'll of course make this longer, but I don't know if I'm gonna complete this sucker anyway. I've gotten a good ways in. It's actually the most competitive game that I've seen of it. Normally the US is just so hosed, and in part just the paralysis of the decision-making process. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, especially with guidance and aid from other people who've been watching, which is really helpful, people who played it before. I mentioned this earlier, of course. Effect on the population was +1 in favor of the US. Actually, surprisingly, a little movement up in the north. In a lot of these places, it was very hard to move the dial. I mean, it budges, but not moving to where a population value switches. Which could just be, you know, they're sitting on the center or something like that, and the direction they're moving isn't really going anywhere. But there was a significant amount of movement here in both directions. You know, it comes out +1, but a number of territories changed their values. Yeah, places that have been hard to get a hold of, like Vinh Binh, that started drifting finally. And Suyan, for that matter, Gokong, they've started drifting kind of pro-US, but other areas where there was still significant results remaining, you know, effects from the offensive, started decreasing some of the values where there was significant effort. You know, places like Binh Dinh, that was already a 0, but I'm heavily placed there. How much does that help me? You know, it's one of the problems that I have playing this is I end up not being able to get the strategic big picture. Like if I'm playing Fire in the Lake or Hearts and Minds, the simpler, more strategically oriented games, I can make the strategic decisions better. In this one, it's very hard to make the decision of, yeah, you know, I'm going to ignore some of these pissy little things. Say, there's, you know, I'm not going to concentrate as the VC and VA on bin din. There's no real fucking reason. So the US kind of drew them into there. But it makes it so that, you know, it's a place that will never convert if I don't get that shit out of there. It's never going to become pro-US. So that's kind of one of the factors that you have in the game is pieces end up or regions end up becoming kind of backwaters to the whole effort because there's no reason to go there. But that knowledge isn't really in my head, clearly, you know. I mean, I kind of know Bin Din's lost cause right now as the U.S., but that doesn't mean I don't want to get there. I just don't have the forces in that area. If it was weak, if this wasn't heavily defended, yes, I would have cleared that out, you know. But it just doesn't seem worth it in the effort. But the point is, I'm not thinking as strategically as I should, even if some of the effects end up working out that way kind of by chance. I'm not thinking through, gee, I should fortify Bin Din to make sure the U.S. never gets a foothold there because it's a valuable province. There's a lot of population there. Anyway, we're up to 210 for the SVN, and I'll continue the rest of this interphase. Wow, that's a lot of dead units. For purchase, I went through the replacement of leaders and such. I actually lost a leader I was very happy with, which was the leader of the 21st Division. He ended up with someone kind of crappy and not particularly loyal, so he may get replaced too soon. But not much happening over on that side. In terms of morale, U.S. morale is holding pretty steady, 463. The big body count helped a lot there. Keeping up with that 15 commitment, so I'm up to 234. That's painful. I got some die rolls for Free World Allies. I'm collecting some up there that I'm allowed to bring in, but I don't know quite what's going on with them. Anyway, I did not have the capability to buy new units this turn because I upgraded Arvin. I put the 9th Division on the map. They have a good leader now, and they're coming in down in 4th Corps, which is where they were operating anyway. It looks like I need more power down there. I also upped my boats. I got some more river boats. I added a cruiser because there's a lot of VC operations happening near the coastline. I want to give them reason to chase off there. For the VC, I actually upgraded a couple of stacks to regiments, built all my battalions, and I'm not going to be able to afford an offensive. I mean, I could have, but I had no replacements, so I boosted my replacements. You can see all the replacements got shot way up. I don't know what that's going to change, but basically seeing the U.S. replacements going up above 30, I'm like, you know, I got to have significant amounts, and let's hold off on that offensive. The game's easier when I'm not doing offensives, obviously. And then I haven't gotten this worked out here. I spent 76 supply and 36 manpower. My manpower is actually getting to be kind of problematic. I'm up to, so this is going to be 560, and if I add another 36, I'm at 447. So I'm getting close to where I'm only going to be getting 3 per off the trail, which is kind of problematic, but you know, it happens, right? I feel like I'm doing pretty well with the VC, to tell you the truth, just because of the population levels being kept kind of low. Anything else? Yeah, I mean, I replaced a headquarters and a regiment that I had. but most of the points went into grabbing some replacement points, because if I'm going to do an offensive, I need a pile of them. That's become obvious. All right, and the next time I'll come back, I'll be setting those units up, and then after effectiveness is checked. Okay, so I dropped something on my injured foot, of course. They're both injured. Don't worry about it. Oh, I haven't done my infiltration yet, which I have to do still. But you can see a lot more VC showing up in the north there. It's kind of easy to get them in there. And then also some more here in the center. And then more concentration back again in 4th Corps, even with those extra boats, with these NVA divisions in place. I got to be careful. In terms of quality or effectiveness, got a bad die roll, which means 4th Corps Arvin is not very effective. My new unit is, I think. What was it? I made the 9th. Nope. That did not make it. Crap. Is that right? Shit. Oh well. Yeah. And I brought in a big augmented division. Was one off. You know, it had a good chance, but and now the problem is 21st, which was one of my active divisions. That's out of play in general for the rest until that gets replaced. So we got problems there. Let me take a look at the infiltration situation, but otherwise I think we're ready to go.